I sat in the polished leather chair of my lawyer's downtown office pen, hovering over my final divorce decree, while my soon-to-be ex-husband and his mother loudly bragged about the luxury mansion his new fiancée was preparing to move into. I just smiled, signed the thick stack of papers, and knew that the moment I walked out of this building, I was going to permanently lock the limitless black cards that had funded their entire delusion. 7 days later, a luxury real estate broker swiped that card for a $200,000 down payment, and the utter devastation that washed over their faces was better than any alimony settlement. Before I dive into exactly how that glorious disaster unfolded, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to reclaim your power from toxic people who mistook your silent generosity for foolish weakness. My name is Chloe, and I am 35 years old. I am the founder and lead investor of a luxury real estate staging and development firm in Atlanta. But if you ask the two people sitting across the massive mahogany conference table from me, I was just a bitter, emotionally unavailable workaholic who was finally getting what she deserved. The air conditioning in the high-rise law office was running full blast, but the chill in the room had nothing to do with the temperature. I sat perfectly still, my posture straight, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Across from me sat Jamal, the man I had called my husband for the past decade. He was practically vibrating with a smug, arrogant energy that filled the entire room. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that I had paid for, checking the time on a solid gold watch that I had purchased for his 30th birthday, and adjusting the silk tie that my personal shopper had selected for him just last month. Jamal was a mid-level marketing manager at a mid-sized firm, making a modest salary that barely covered the lease on his imported sports car. Yet he carried himself like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He leaned back in his plush leather chair, cracking jokes with his divorce attorney, a balding man who looked visibly uncomfortable with Jamal's lack of decorum. "Man, I cannot wait to get these final signatures out of the way," Jamal said, his voice booming across the polished table. "Tasha is already looking at fabric swatches for the new place. She wants to do something light and airy. You know, a real home, not a sterile museum where nobody is allowed to relax." He threw a pointed look in my direction, waiting for a reaction. He wanted me to snap. He wanted me to cry. He wanted me to fulfill the narrative he had carefully constructed for his new 28-year-old fiancée, the narrative of the jealous, aging ex-wife who could not handle losing such a prize of a man. I gave him nothing. I simply picked up the heavy silver pen provided by my attorney and turned to the next page of the settlement agreement. Sitting directly behind Jamal, treating this legal proceeding like a spectator sport, was his mother, Beatrice. Beatrice was a woman who believed she possessed the grace and pedigree of old money royalty, despite having lived in a cramped apartment before I bought her a sprawling condo in a gated community. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and clutched a designer handbag tightly to her chest. I recognized the bag immediately because the receipt had been sent to my email 3 weeks ago. "It is about time my son gets the peaceful life he deserves," Beatrice Stage whispered to Jamal's lawyer, making absolutely sure her voice carried across the room to me. "A man like Jamal needs a traditional woman, someone soft, someone who understands how to cater to a king, not a woman who spends her life chasing construction contracts and acting like she wears the pants in the family. It is unnatural. Jamal was suffocating in this marriage. Tasha is a breath of fresh air. She actually respects the Blackwell family name." I paused my pen for a fraction of a second. The Blackwell family name. It took every ounce of my willpower not to laugh out loud. The Blackwell family name had zero equity until I attached my credit score to it. When I married Jamal 10 years ago, he was drowning in student loans and credit card debt. His credit was so poor, he could not even secure a cell phone contract without a co-signer. I paid off his debts. I elevated his lifestyle. I quietly absorbed every financial burden so he could walk into rooms with his head held high. I let him play the role of the provider because I loved him, and I wanted him to feel secure. That was my first mistake. Giving a small man unearned power does not make him grateful. It makes him entitled. "Just ignore them, Chloe," my attorney whispered, placing a reassuring hand near my files. "We are almost done. Just 3 more signatures, and you are legally severed from this circus." I nodded and smoothly signed my name on the dotted line. The scratching sound of the pen on paper was loud in the tense room. Each stroke felt like a heavy chain snapping. I was not losing a husband. I was shedding a massive, ungrateful financial liability. "Look at her!" Beatrice scoffed loudly, adjusting her posture. Ice cold, not a single tear. "I told you, Jamal, she does not have a maternal loving bone in her body. Tasha was practically weeping with joy when you took her ring shopping last week. That is a real woman. A woman who knows how to appreciate a provider." I slowly raised my eyes and looked directly at Beatrice. For a brief second, she faltered under my gaze, shifting uncomfortably in her chair before jutting her chin out defensively. She thought her words were cutting me deep. She thought the mention of Tasha ring shopping was the ultimate victory. What she did not know was that the jeweler had called me directly when Jamal tried to authorize a $30,000 charge for that diamond. I had approved the transaction because I wanted this divorce finalized without Jamal fighting me for spousal support. I had bought my own replacement ring just to expedite his exit from my life. Jamal chuckled, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the table. "Let it go, Ma. She is just mad because she knows she pushed away the best thing that ever happened to her. All that money she makes cannot buy her a warm bed at night. I gave her 10 years of my life and she wasted them caring more about staging open houses than building a home with me. I am upgrading now. I am getting the peace I deserve." I finished signing the final page. I placed the pen down with a deliberate, quiet click. I looked at Jamal, taking in his smug smile, his perfectly groomed beard, the expensive cologne that filled the air between us. "Are we finished here?" I asked, turning to my lawyer. "Yes," my lawyer replied, organizing the thick stack of documents. "The judge will stamp these by the end of the day. You are officially divorced." I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles from my tailored blazer. I did not look angry. I did not look defeated. I felt a profound, radiant calm wash over my entire body. It was the kind of peace you only feel when you have survived a storm and realize you are the one controlling the weather. "Congratulations, Jamal," I said, my voice smooth and even. "You are finally free to live the life you have always talked about. I genuinely wish you and Tasha all the luck in the world. You are going to need it." Jamal laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "I do not need luck, Chloe. I have got everything I need right now. A beautiful fiancé, a new chapter, and a mother who finally gets to see her son happy. You just take care of your little construction projects. Do not worry about the Blackwells anymore. We are stepping into a whole new tax bracket." Beatrice stood up beside him, adjusting her designer scarf. "You hear that? We are moving up. Jamal is taking us to look at properties this weekend. Real properties. Not those little fixer-uppers you flip. Luxury villas. It is time he lives in a house that matches his status." I looked at the designer handbag clutched in Beatrice's hands. I looked at the gold watch gleaming on Jamal's wrist. I thought about the primary black cards sitting in my wallet, the ones that were currently paying for their phones, their cars, their insurance, their dinners, and the very clothes on their backs. "Enjoy the villa shopping, Beatrice," I said, offering her a sweet, razor-sharp smile. "Make sure you pick out something truly spectacular. Jamal deserves nothing but the absolute best." Jamal puffed out his chest, clearly taking my sarcasm as genuine defeat. "You know it. Have a good life, Chloe. Try not to work yourself into an early grave." I did not reply. I picked up my briefcase, thanked my attorney, and walked out of the conference room. I did not look back. I did not need to. I could hear them celebrating behind the heavy wooden door, their voices loud and triumphant. They thought they had won. They thought they had discarded a bitter woman and kept the golden goose. They had no idea that the golden goose had just signed her own emancipation papers. They had no idea that the clock had just started ticking on the most spectacular financial freefall of their lives. And I was going to enjoy every single second of the crash. The heavy oak door of the conference room clicked shut behind me, sealing my ex-husband and his mother inside with their hollow victory. I walked down the long carpeted corridor toward the elevator bank, my heels sinking slightly into the plush fabric. I pressed the down button and watched the digital numbers above the brushed steel doors slowly descend. Before the doors could slide open, I heard the sharp, unmistakable clack of Beatrice's designer heels hurrying down the hallway, followed by Jamal's heavier footsteps. They had practically run out of the office just to ensure they could share this final suffocating elevator ride with me. The doors parted. I stepped inside and moved to the back corner. Jamal and Beatrice strutted in right after me, positioning themselves near the front. The confined space forced an uncomfortable proximity. The air instantly thickened with the scent of Jamal's signature cologne, an exclusive fragrance imported from Italy that cost $600 a bottle. I knew the exact price because my corporate account was billed for it every 3 months. Beatrice did not waste a single second. She pulled her phone from her purse, dialed a number on speakerphone, and held it up with a theatrical flourish. She was calling her luxury travel concierge. "Yes, David, it is Beatrice Blackwell," she announced, her voice echoing off the mirrored walls of the elevator. "I need to finalize the bookings for my son and his new bride. We are planning an extravagant welcome to the family luxury trip for Tasha. She has been under so much stress dealing with this messy divorce process, and she deserves a proper celebration. I am thinking 2 weeks in the Maldives. Overwater bungalow, private chef, the absolute works." She paused, listening to the travel agent on the other end, confirming the exorbitant pricing. Beatrice did not flinch. She turned slightly, looking over her shoulder to make sure I was watching. She gave Jamal a proud, sickeningly sweet smile. "Just put it on the black card like always, baby," she said, her voice dripping with maternal pride. "Your father would be so incredibly proud of the provider you have become. You know exactly how to take care of the women who truly respect you." "Consider it done, Ma," Jamal said, adjusting his silk cuffs and puffing out his chest. "Tasha gets whatever she wants. I told her we are stepping into a new chapter and I do not do anything halfway. Let David know to book the first-class suites. I am not letting my future wife fly commercial." I kept my eyes fixed on the digital floor indicator, watching the numbers drop from 40 to 35. The irony of their conversation was so thick it was practically choking me. "Put it on the black card like always." Those words bounced around inside my head, unlocking a decade of deeply buried frustration. The card Beatrice was bragging about, the heavy titanium American Express Centurion card, sitting in Jamal's custom leather wallet, did not belong to him. It was tied directly to the primary corporate account of my luxury real estate staging and development firm. Jamal was nothing more than an authorized user. Beatrice was an authorized user. Even Jamal's sister Maya had a card for emergencies. I stood there in silence, letting the history of my marriage lay itself bare in my mind. 10 years ago, Jamal was crying on the edge of the mattress in our cramped one-bedroom apartment. His marketing firm had passed him over for a promotion for the 3rd time, and he felt like an absolute failure. My business, on the other hand, was just starting to skyrocket. I was securing multi-million-dollar staging contracts for commercial developers across Atlanta. Instead of letting my success threaten him, I made the fatal error of trying to build him up. I believed in the cultural expectation that a rising tide lifts all boats. I thought I was creating a partnership. I wanted the man I loved to walk into any room with his head held high, unburdened by financial insecurity. So I transferred my wealth into his name. I set up the corporate structures to hide my net worth from public databases, specifically to protect his fragile ego. I handed him the black card and told him that my money was our money. I let him pay for the expensive dinners. I let him buy his mother a sprawling condo in a gated community. I let him upgrade his wardrobe, lease luxury sports cars, and play the role of the high-rolling executive. I thought empowering him financially would make him a better partner. Instead, he took the pedestal I built for him and used it to look down on me. Over the years, Jamal began to actually believe the illusion we had created. He started treating my money as his birthright, while treating my long working hours as a personal insult to his lifestyle. And Beatrice was worse. I endured countless Thanksgiving dinners sitting silently at the end of the table, while Beatrice loudly advised me to be grateful. She would tell the entire extended family that her brilliant son was a marketing genius who graciously funded his struggling wife's little house decorating hobby. She called me a gold digger to my face, warning Jamal that I was only staying in the marriage to ride his coattails. I never corrected her. I swallowed my pride to protect his. I silently bankrolled their entire arrogant existence, enduring their constant disrespect because I thought loyalty required sacrifice. I was a fool, but I was not a fool anymore. The elevator chimed pleasantly as we reached the ground floor. The door slid open to reveal the sprawling marble-floored lobby of the legal building. Sitting on a velvet sofa near the exit was Tasha. Tasha was 28 years old, wearing a skin-tight designer dress and oversized sunglasses indoors. Surrounding her feet was a small mountain of shopping bags from Prada, Gucci, and Tom Ford. She stood up the moment she saw Jamal tossing her hair over her shoulder and strutting toward the elevator bank. She threw her arms around Jamal's neck and gave him a dramatic, lingering kiss, making sure to lock eyes with me over his shoulder. "Did you take care of the dead weight, baby?" Tasha asked, her voice deliberately loud so the security guards at the front desk could hear. "All taken care of," Jamal said, wrapping a protective arm around her waist. "The papers are signed. I am a free man." Beatrice walked over and kissed Tasha on the cheek. "And I just secured your welcome trip to the Maldives, sweetheart." Jamal told the concierge to put it all on the black card. "We are celebrating your new life in absolute luxury." Tasha gasped, clapping her hands together in exaggerated delight. "Oh my goodness, Jamal, you are entirely too good to me." She then turned her attention directly to me. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my tailored business suit, offering a perfectly practiced look of feigned pity. "I am really sorry it had to end this way, Chloe," Tasha said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But you have to understand, a man like Jamal needs a woman who can actually keep up with his lifestyle. He needs softness. He needs someone who knows how to appreciate a true provider. I really hope your little staging business picks up soon so you do not struggle too much on your own. It must be terrifying stepping out into the real world without Jamal's safety net." I looked at the designer shopping bags resting by the velvet sofa. I knew exactly which account had just been billed for those leather goods. I looked at Beatrice, practically glowing with malice, and then at Jamal, who was puffing his chest out like a proud peacock. They were so deeply entrenched in their shared delusion that they had completely lost touch with reality. I did not snap. I did not raise my voice or cause a scene in the lobby. I simply offered Tasha a warm, chilling smile. "I appreciate your concern, Tasha," I said, my voice steady and dangerously calm. "Enjoy the trip to the Maldives. It sounds like an absolute dream. Make sure Jamal handles all the bookings and pays the deposits today. You really would not want to miss out on the full luxury experience before reality sets in." Jamal scoffed, shaking his head and pulling Tasha closer to him. "Do not worry about my pockets, Chloe. Just worry about yours. You are going to need to figure out how to pay your own rent from now on." I nodded slowly, letting his words hang in the air between us. "You are absolutely right, Jamal. It is time I start worrying entirely about my own pockets. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone." I walked past them, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. I pushed through the heavy glass revolving doors and stepped out into the bright, blinding afternoon sun. The humid Atlanta air hit my face, but I felt completely refreshed. I walked over to the valet stand and handed the attendant my ticket. When he brought my sleek black SUV around, I tipped him a crisp $100 bill, slid into the driver's seat, and closed the door, sealing myself inside the quiet, soundproof cabin. Through the tinted glass of my windshield, I watched Jamal, Tasha, and Beatrice walk out of the building. They were laughing together, carrying the heavy designer shopping bags, looking like the absolute picture of generational wealth and limitless success. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out my phone. The screen illuminated the dark interior of my car. I opened my private banking application and logged into the master corporate dashboard. I stared at the 3 names listed under the authorized user section: Jamal Blackwell, Beatrice Blackwell, Maya Blackwell. I hovered my thumb over the screen, watching them load their shopping bags into the trunk of Jamal's leased sports car. The 10 years of silent financial servitude, the countless family dinners where I was humiliated, the thousands of dollars spent just hours ago by a woman trying to replace me, it all culminated in this single, perfectly orchestrated moment. My thumb descended on the glowing screen of my phone. Jamal Blackwell. I tapped his name. A prompt appeared asking to confirm the revocation of all account privileges. I hit confirm. The screen loaded for a fraction of a second before a green checkmark appeared. 10 years of funding his fragile masculinity vanished into the digital ether just like that. Next was Beatrice Blackwell. I tapped her name. Confirm. Goodbye to the weekly spa treatments, the designer handbags, and the country club lunches she used to impress her friends while trash-talking my career. Finally, Maya Blackwell. Confirm. No more emergency funds for her sudden, mysterious financial crises that I was always expected to bail her out of. I navigated back to my primary account dashboard. I selected the Master Corporate Black Card and engaged the Global Freeze protocol. Every secondary physical card, every digital wallet link, every saved profile on their luxury shopping apps was immediately rendered useless. What Jamal and Beatrice were currently carrying in their wallets were now just heavy pieces of metal with absolutely zero purchasing power. I knew exactly how this was going to play out over the coming week. When you operate at this level of wealth, high-end vendors do not always settle transactions instantly. Concierge services, luxury travel agents, and exclusive boutiques often run a soft pre-authorization or simply keep the card on file to bill the full amount a few days later. Beatrice's travel agent would likely batch his luxury Maldives bookings at the end of the week. Tasha's designer bags might have gone through on a pending hold, but the final settlement would hit a massive brick wall. This was the beauty of the financial ecosystem I had built for them. It provided a phantom grace period, a short, beautiful window where they would continue to walk around, believing they were royalty making promises and financial commitments they could never possibly fulfill. I took a deep breath and let the soft leather of my driver's seat hold my weight. The air conditioning in the cabin was cool and crisp. For the first time in a decade, my chest did not feel tight with anxiety. I was not bracing myself for a notification about a ridiculous charge at an overpriced steakhouse. I was not calculating how to softly suggest Jamal stick to a budget without triggering a 3-day argument about how I did not respect his position as the head of the household. I was just Chloe. I was finally free. I started the engine. The low, powerful purr of the motor sounded like a victory march. I pulled out of the valet area, gliding smoothly past the spot where my ex-husband's leased vehicle had just been loaded with shopping bags. He was probably already halfway to some exclusive restaurant ordering top-shelf champagne to toast his liberation from the woman who paid for the very glass in his hand. Let him drink. The bill would come eventually. As I drove through the bustling Atlanta streets, my mind shifted from the emotional release to the cold, hard logistics of my wealth protection. The credit cards were just the main artery. There were dozens of smaller capillaries that needed to be surgically cauterized. When I reached my office building, a sleek glass tower where my actual real estate staging and development empire operated, I took the private elevator straight to my floor. I walked past my dedicated team, offering genuine smiles, feeling lighter than air. I stepped into my private office and sat at my expansive desk overlooking the city skyline. I opened my laptop and pulled up the master spreadsheet of my corporate accounts. I logged into the private car service platform and permanently deleted Jamal's profile. I accessed the luxury dining concierge application and removed his contact number and authorization privileges. I contacted the property management team of Beatrice's gated community and formally removed my limited liability company as the guarantor for her upcoming association fees. I was methodical, surgical, and completely devoid of any guilt. It was like cleaning out a deeply cluttered closet. You do not mourn the trash you throw away. You just enjoy the newly reclaimed space. I picked up my office phone and dialed my firm's chief financial officer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Valerie, who had spent the last 5 years quietly managing the absurd personal expenses Jamal funneled through our accounts. When she answered, I did not waste time with pleasantries. I told her the divorce was finalized and the cards were officially locked. I heard Valerie let out a long, audible sigh of relief over the speakerphone. We spent the next hour restructuring the expense accounts, ensuring that not a single cent of our company's capital could be accidentally routed to anything associated with the Blackwell name. I instructed Valerie to refuse any calls from Jamal or Beatrice. I knew their first instinct when a card declined would be to blame my accounting department. If they tried to bypass the declined cards by calling my firm directly, they were to be met with a standardized corporate refusal. Valerie assured me that the firewall was up and our assets were completely insulated. Next came my personal inbox. Over the years, because my corporate account was the primary funding source, all the receipts, billing inquiries, and luxury vendor communications defaulted to my email address. I opened my settings and created a new mail routing rule. Any incoming message from the credit card company, the travel concierge, the luxury auto dealership, or the country club was to be automatically flagged and forwarded directly to Jamal's personal email address. I wanted him to see the declines in real time. I wanted him to be the one to open those emails and realize the safety net he had taken for granted was completely gone. I wanted him to feel the cold, hard slap of reality when the merchant started asking for alternative forms of payment and he realized his own bank account was empty. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, staring out at the sprawling city below me. They had exactly 7 days. 7 days before the pending holds dropped, and the hard declines began to cascade through their lives like a localized economic depression. 7 days of them flexing for social media, making grand declarations to their friends and parading Tasha around as the new queen of a kingdom that did not actually exist. They were about to learn the very harsh difference between having money and merely standing next to it. For years, Jamal had convinced himself that his proximity to my success made him a success. He believed his own hype. He genuinely thought that trading me in for a younger, more compliant woman would instantly transfer my financial power over to her. He thought his lifestyle was a permanent fixture of his existence, completely blind to the fact that I was the engine keeping the lights on. The sun began to set over Atlanta, casting a warm, golden glow across my office walls. My phone remained completely silent. Jamal was likely too busy celebrating his supposed victory to notice that his digital wallet had been reduced to a collection of useless pixels. He was a man who defined his entire worth by what he could purchase and flaunt for an audience. I had just turned his purchasing power to absolute zero. I closed my laptop and packed my briefcase. The stage was set. The trap was armed and quietly ticking in the background. All I had to do now was sit back, continue running my real estate empire, and let their own boundless arrogance lead them right over the edge of the financial cliff. The first 48 hours after finalizing the divorce were an exercise in psychological discipline. When you operate within the upper echelons of wealth, the financial infrastructure does not move with the sudden, frantic urgency of a standard debit card transaction. Luxury vendors, high-end concierges, and exclusive boutiques operate heavily on trust and batch processing. When Jamal or Beatrice handed over that heavy titanium metal, the merchants did not immediately demand a hard, instant settlement from the bank. They ran a soft authorization, a digital handshake that verified the card was active at the exact moment of the swipe, fully trusting that the primary account holder would clear the ledger at the close of the business week. Because my firm had an impeccable financial history, that institutional trust was ironclad. They were coasting on the lingering, powerful fumes of my stellar credit rating. It created a phantom grace period, a beautiful, invisible suspension bridge over a massive financial canyon. And Jamal, Beatrice, and Tasha were sprinting across it completely blind to the fact that the bridge had already collapsed behind them. By Wednesday afternoon, the social media spectacle began in earnest. I was sitting in my office reviewing architectural renderings for a new commercial property in Midtown when my assistant brought me my afternoon espresso. After she left, I allowed myself a rare moment of indulgence. I picked up my phone, opened my social media, and navigated directly to Tasha's public profile. She had not blocked me. In fact, I knew she had purposely left her page completely public specifically so I could bear witness to her so-called triumph. The first post on her feed was a meticulously curated video montage from a luxury boutique in Buckhead. Tasha was twirling in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror holding a limited edition lambskin handbag that retailed for more than Jamal earned in 2 entire months. The caption read, "When a real man upgrades his life, he makes sure his queen shines. No more masculine energy around here, just soft girl era and endless blessings." She tagged Jamal, who had quickly commented with a string of fire emojis and a crown. The absolute audacity was almost poetic. I swiped to the next slide on her profile. It was a short looping video of Tasha and Beatrice sitting on the tufted velvet banquette of an exclusive French bistro downtown. They were clinking crystal flutes of vintage rosé. Beatrice was wearing the exact designer silk scarf she had flaunted in the lawyer's office, her face plastered with a triumphant artificial smile. She had left her own comment under the post writing, "So refreshing to finally have a daughter-in-law who knows how to appreciate the finer things in life. The Blackwell men always provide, always." I stared at the screen, letting the pure, unadulterated comedy of the situation wash over me. The Blackwell men were providing absolutely nothing. The rosé they were currently sipping, the expensive lambskin handbag swinging from Tasha's wrist, the valet parking for the leased sports car Jamal used to drop them off. All of it was dangling in a digital purgatory waiting for a financial settlement that was never going to come. They were throwing a lavish victory parade right on top of a trapdoor. The stark contrast between their online fantasy and my back-end reality was staggering. By Thursday morning, the corporate financial dashboard began to tell the true, unvarnished story. My inbox, which usually received a neat, quiet summary of cleared weekly expenses, started pinging with automated alerts. The first notification came from a high-end auto detailing service where Jamal routinely took his car to impress his coworkers. The subject line indicated a failed batch settlement. An hour later, a much more urgent email arrived from the management office of the exclusive private dining club where Beatrice hosted her weekly socialite luncheons. Beatrice's country club was a viper's nest of gossiping women who only respected her because she consistently picked up the tab for their lavish lunches. Their accounting system had attempted to run the card on file for a party of 6. The transaction had bounced back with a hard rejection code. The phantom grace period was rapidly expiring as merchants moved from soft holds to actual capture requests. The financial system was finally waking up to the fact that the money pipeline had been brutally severed. The most satisfying notification arrived just before lunch on Friday. It was from David, the overly accommodating luxury travel concierge Beatrice had loudly spoken to in the elevator. The email was marked with high importance. David was writing to gently inform the account holder that the massive deposit required to secure the overwater bungalow in the Maldives for Jamal and Tasha's welcome trip had encountered an unexpected processing error. He politely requested that we provide an alternative card or contact our banking institution to lift whatever security hold was preventing the transfer of $25,000. David was practically begging for reassurance, clearly terrified of losing his massive commission on the vacation package. He assumed it was just a simple fraud alert trigger. He had absolutely no idea the card he held on file was now entirely dead. In the past, this was exactly the moment I would have stepped in to save the day. For 10 years, whenever Jamal overextended himself to look like a boss, or Beatrice ran up an embarrassing tab to impress her friends, I would quietly authorize the funds, smooth over the relationships with the vendors, and protect them from the crushing humiliation of a declined card. I would send a polite email back, authorize a wire transfer, and keep their gilded carriage rolling down the street without them ever having to face the consequences of their spending. Not today. Today I did not type a single word of reassurance. I did not contact my bank. Instead, I opened the administrative settings of my corporate email server. I selected the incoming addresses for David the travel agent, the private dining club, the auto detailer, and the luxury boutiques Tasha had tagged in her posts. With clinical, emotionless precision, I created a hard routing rule. I set every single one of those panicked notifications, failed payment alerts, and urgent requests for alternative funding to auto-forward directly to Jamal's personal email address. I imagined Jamal sitting in his beige cubicle at his mid-level marketing job. He was a man who rarely checked his personal email during the day, too busy pretending to be a high-powered executive in front of his unimpressed coworkers. His salary barely covered his car lease, yet he walked around the office demanding the respect of a chief executive. He probably had his phone buzzing in his pocket, assuming it was just more social media notifications from Tasha's followers praising his provider mindset. He had absolutely no idea that his inbox was rapidly filling up with the digital equivalent of financial landmines. The auto-forward rule was a masterpiece of passive retaliation. It removed my firm from the equation entirely and placed the burden exactly where it belonged. I was no longer the shock absorber for his reckless arrogance. I was just a spectator watching gravity do its job. I closed the email dashboard and leaned back in my chair, taking a slow sip of my sparkling water. The true beauty of this phase was the silence. Jamal and Beatrice were not going to call me to complain about the cards declining. Their pride simply would not allow it. To call me and demand to know why the black card was not working would be a direct, unavoidable admission that their entire kingdom was built on my land. They would try to fix it themselves first. Jamal would probably call the credit card company, puff out his chest, and demand to speak to a supervisor, only to be politely informed by a customer service representative that he was merely an authorized user with zero administrative rights on the closed account. He would be told in the most sterile corporate language possible that he had no authority, no access, and absolutely no funds. Friday afternoon rolled into Friday evening. The social media posts from Tasha and Beatrice began to slow down drastically. The champagne brunches and shopping spree updates were noticeably absent from their stories. I knew exactly what that meant. The deep, burning embarrassment was starting to leak into their reality. Maybe a waiter at a nice restaurant had quietly approached their table to hand back the titanium card, whispering that they needed another form of payment. Maybe Jamal had tried to buy Tasha a celebratory dinner and felt the sudden terrifying drop in his stomach when the machine blinked red. The phantom grace period was officially over. The vendors were demanding their money. The travel agent was likely leaving frantic voicemails on Beatrice's phone, and the walls of their delusion were rapidly closing in around them. I packed up my briefcase for the weekend, feeling a profound, undeniable sense of lightness. I walked out of my office, greeted my team, and took the private elevator down to the lobby. The weekend stretched out before me entirely free of the usual manufactured drama. I did not have to worry about bailing Maya out of a sudden debt, or managing Beatrice's extravagant expectations, or pretending that Jamal was something he fundamentally was not. I drove home to my own space, a beautiful, sprawling penthouse that reflected my hard work, my vision, and my actual reality. I poured myself a glass of expensive red wine, a vintage I had purchased entirely for my own enjoyment, and stood on my balcony overlooking the vibrant city lights. The trap was fully set. The auto-forwards were active. The accounts were dead. The vendors were hungry. I knew the silence from Jamal and Beatrice would not last forever. They were cornered, and cornered people always lash out. They would try to assert dominance in the only way they knew how, by trying to make me feel small. I took a slow sip of my wine, savoring the complex notes, and smiled into the cool evening breeze. I was ready for whatever desperate, transparent move they attempted next. The financial cutoff was just the appetizer. The weekend passed in a state of absolute, uninterrupted tranquility. For the first time in a decade, my Sunday was not hijacked by Jamal's manufactured emergencies or Beatrice's demanding social calendar. I woke up early, enjoyed a quiet breakfast on my balcony, and spent the entire weekend focusing entirely on myself. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I felt recharged and razor sharp. I arrived at my office ready to tackle a massive commercial staging project in the city's financial district. My team was operating at peak efficiency, and Valerie, my chief financial officer, stopped by my desk just before 10 o'clock to confirm that our digital fortress was holding strong. A few random charges had bumped against our firewall over the weekend, mostly subscription services, and a rather ambitious attempt at a high-end steakhouse, but they were instantly rejected and seamlessly redirected to Jamal's personal email. I was in the middle of reviewing a series of imported marble samples for a client when my personal cell phone illuminated on my desk. I had separated my private and corporate lines years ago, mostly to prevent Jamal's relentless vanity crises from disrupting my actual wealth generation. The screen displayed a new text message notification. The sender was Beatrice. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, letting the heavy marble sample rest on my desk. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the rich, dark roast before picking up the device. I knew she was not reaching out to apologize. Beatrice did not possess the emotional capacity for remorse. She was reaching out to assert dominance, to remind me that she believed she still held the upper hand in this dynamic. I unlocked the screen and opened the message. The text was a masterpiece of condescension, dripping with the kind of unearned arrogance that only a woman spending someone else's money could muster. It read, "We need you out of the premium storage unit by Friday afternoon. Jamal needs the space for his new custom golf simulator. He and Tasha are clearing out your leftover clutter today. Do not even think about taking the Italian espresso machine. I bought that specifically for my son as a housewarming gift, and it stays with the Blackwell family. Have your movers finished by noon." I stared at the glowing text, reading it twice just to fully absorb the sheer staggering magnitude of her delusion. It was almost breathtaking. Beatrice was sitting in a condo I purchased, texting me from a smartphone on a family plan I paid for, demanding I vacate a storage facility that I legally owned so her son could install a luxury sports simulator he absolutely could not afford. The disconnect from reality was so profound it bordered on clinical. Let us break down the absolute absurdity of her demands, starting with the storage unit itself. When Jamal and I were married, his obsession with accumulating high-end toys, designer shoes, and bulky athletic equipment quickly outgrew our shared spaces. To keep our primary residence from looking like a luxury pawn shop, I leased a massive climate-controlled unit at a premier private storage facility across town. But I did not lease it under the Blackwell name. I am a real estate investor. I do not leave legal liabilities to chance. The lease agreement, the insurance policy, and the access codes were entirely registered to my primary limited liability company. I had paid the rental fees 2 years in advance using my corporate account. Jamal only had a secondary gate code, which I had already instructed the facility manager to deactivate the moment the divorce papers were signed. Then there was the matter of the Italian espresso machine. Beatrice claiming she bought it for her son was the most laughable part of the entire message. I remembered the exact day that machine arrived. It was a commercial-grade dual-boiler masterpiece, imported directly from Milan, retailing for nearly $6,000. Beatrice had indeed presented it to Jamal at a family dinner with a massive silver bow, claiming she wanted him to have the best coffee experience possible before his stressful marketing meetings. What she conveniently forgot to mention to the rest of the family was that she had used the authorized user black card to purchase it. I literally paid for the gift she used to buy her son's affection. The machine belonged to my company, just like the storage unit, just like the luxury SUV Jamal planned to use to transport it. I imagined the scene currently unfolding in their minds. Jamal was probably sitting in his cubicle right now, browsing online catalogs for a state-of-the-art golf simulator, looking at $10,000 screen setups and premium turf mats, completely unaware that his credit rating could barely secure a set of used golf clubs at a thrift store. He likely told Tasha that he was going to build the ultimate masculine retreat in the storage unit, flexing his provider muscles to impress his new bride. Tasha was probably cheering him on, already planning how to decorate the space around the simulator, totally blind to the fact that they were both marching toward a humiliating brick wall. Beatrice's text was a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion of control. She needed to feel like she was evicting me, like she was the matriarch, banishing the unworthy ex-wife from the kingdom. She wanted me to argue. She wanted me to send back a long emotional paragraph, explaining how unfair she was being. She wanted a fight, because a fight would validate her relevance. If I engaged, if I defended myself, it would mean she still had the power to affect my emotional state. I refused to give her that satisfaction. I was not going to explain the intricacies of corporate property law to a woman who did not understand basic accounting. I was not going to tell her that Jamal's gate code at the facility would currently flash a bright red error message if he tried to punch it in. I was not going to point out that the facility's security guards had strict instructions to deny entry to anyone not listed on the updated corporate manifest. I placed my phone on the desk and let it sit there for a full 10 minutes. I wanted her to watch the read receipt. I wanted her to sit in her living room staring at her screen wondering why the volatile jealous ex-wife she had fabricated in her mind was not taking the bait. I used those 10 minutes to review the final architectural approvals for my Midtown project, signing my name with a smooth, steady hand. My business was thriving, my assets were secured, and my mind was entirely clear. When I finally picked up the phone to respond, I did not draft a multi-paragraph defense. I did not mention the divorce decree, the locked credit cards, or the impending financial doom that was currently creeping up on them. I kept my response surgically precise. I wanted to give them just enough rope to hang themselves completely. If they wanted to drive a rented moving truck to a highly secure facility, punch in a dead code, and argue with armed security guards about an espresso machine they did not own, I was not going to stand in their way. I opened the keyboard and typed a single calculated sentence. Take whatever you can afford. I hit send. The message swooshed away in a little blue bubble. It was the perfect response because it was the absolute, undeniable truth. They were free to take whatever they could afford, which as of last Thursday was precisely nothing. I smiled, imagining Beatrice reading that line. She would misinterpret it entirely. Her arrogant, self-serving brain would read it as a surrender. She would think I was rolling over, admitting defeat, and abandoning the high-end coffee machine and the premium storage space because I was simply too intimidated by the Blackwell family united front. She would probably show the text to Jamal and Tasha, framing it as a massive victory for their side. I locked my phone and slid it into my desk drawer. The trap was set perfectly. Jamal would eventually have to face the humiliation of arriving at the storage facility, perhaps with Tasha in tow to show off his new golf simulator space, only to be turned away at the security gate like a common trespasser. He would discover that his name carried no weight, his access was denied, and the luxury items he had claimed as his own were locked firmly behind a corporate steel door. The phantom grace period was rapidly closing, and the real-world consequences were beginning to manifest in physical spaces. I turned my attention back to the marble samples on my desk, feeling a deep, resonating sense of accomplishment. The beauty of true independence is that you no longer have to explain your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply enforce them and let reality do the heavy lifting. I did not have to argue with Beatrice about who owned the espresso machine because my legal team and my banking institution had already established the facts. They were about to learn that playing house with someone else's money always ends in an eviction. As the afternoon wore on, my office remained a sanctuary of productivity and peace. I finalized the Midtown contracts, approved a new marketing budget for our upcoming residential developments, and completely ignored the inevitable chaos brewing across town. The financial guillotine was still suspended in the air, but the blade was getting sharper with every passing hour. I knew the silence would eventually break. Someone in their camp was going to stumble into a financial landmine they could not ignore, and the fallout would be spectacular. But until that moment arrived, I was perfectly content to sit in the empire I built, completely untouchable, waiting for the inevitable phone call that would signal the beginning of their absolute collapse. The ringing of my private cell phone cut through the quiet hum of my office on Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished reviewing the quarterly projections for my staging firm when the bright screen lit up with an incoming call. The caller ID displayed a name I honestly had not expected to see so soon. It was Liam. Liam was Jamal's brother-in-law, a tall, perpetually sunburnt white man who had married Jamal's sister Maya about 5 years ago. He worked as a luxury real estate broker for one of the most prestigious agencies in Atlanta. Liam was a decent guy, energetic, eager to please, and highly motivated by commissions, but he was also completely oblivious to the actual financial dynamics of the Blackwell family. Maya and Beatrice had sold him the exact same fabricated narrative they sold everyone else. They convinced Liam that the Blackwells were a dynasty of generational wealth and that Jamal was a high-powered executive running the city. Liam bought into the fantasy hook, line, and sinker. He respected Jamal, revered Beatrice, and treated me with a polite, slightly distant courtesy, assuming I was simply the quiet wife tagging along on the Blackwell family's glamorous ride. I let the phone ring 3 times before picking it up. I knew exactly why Liam was calling, or at least I knew it had to do with the financial phantom zone my ex-husband was currently inhabiting. I pressed answer and held the phone to my ear. Chloe, my favorite sister-in-law. Liam's voice boomed through the speaker, radiating the kind of aggressive enthusiasm reserved for brokers who were about to close a career-defining deal. How is the real estate queen doing this beautiful afternoon? I leaned back in my chair, swiveling slightly to look out at the Atlanta skyline. I am doing exceptionally well, Liam. What can I do for you today? Liam let out a loud, breathless chuckle. Actually, I am calling to thank you. I just got off the phone with Jamal and I am absolutely blown away. I mean, I knew you guys were looking to upgrade your portfolio, but this is a massive move. I just wanted to call and personally express my gratitude for keeping this transaction in the family. You have no idea what a commission like this does for my quarter. Maya and I are practically celebrating already. I kept my facial expression completely neutral, though my pulse ticked with a sharp, calculated intrigue. I rested my elbows on my desk and laced my fingers together. Is that so? Tell me, Liam, what exactly did Jamal reach out to you about? Liam did not even catch the investigative tone of my question. He was entirely too blinded by the glare of an impending payout. He is bringing Beatrice down to the new Cypress Ridge development this afternoon. They want to tour Villa Number 4, the crown jewel of the entire community. Jamal told me he wants to lock it down immediately before it hits the broader market. He said you guys were looking for a fresh start, a property that truly reflects his executive status. We are talking a $5 million listing, Chloe. $5 million. It is the most breathtaking modern build in the district. Floor-to-ceiling glass imported Italian marble, a private infinity pool overlooking the valley. It is an absolute masterpiece. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, letting the sheer, unadulterated madness of Jamal's actions wash over me. A $5 million villa. Jamal, a man whose monthly salary would barely cover the property tax on the landscaping of a home like that, was scheduling a private viewing for a multi-million-dollar estate. He had taken his delusion and accelerated it past the point of arrogance straight into financial psychosis. He was dragging his mother along to validate the fantasy, and he was using his brother-in-law to facilitate the illusion. That sounds incredibly ambitious, I said, my voice smooth and perfectly modulated. And they are planning to secure this property today. That is the best part, Liam exclaimed, the excitement practically vibrating through the phone. Jamal said he does not want to risk losing it to cash buyers from out of state. You know how competitive the luxury market is right now. He told me to have the paperwork completely drawn up and ready to go. He is planning to drop the earnest money deposit right on the spot after the walkthrough. $200,000 swipe and sign. He said to make sure I had the mobile processing terminal charged and ready to run the black card. The black card. A sharp, genuinely entertained smile spread across my face. It was almost too perfect. Jamal was not just trying to buy a house he could not afford. He was planning to execute a $200,000 point-of-sale transaction using a piece of titanium that I had permanently deactivated 5 days ago. He was walking straight into a highly secure, heavily documented real estate transaction, armed with nothing but a canceled credit card and the boundless arrogance of a man who believed consequences did not apply to him. The fact that they were pulling Liam into this mess added a layer of complexity that I had not fully anticipated. Liam was relying on this deal. He was probably already mentally spending the commission planning vacations with Maya, upgrading his own lifestyle based on the promise of the Blackwell wealth. Jamal and Beatrice were not just humiliating themselves. They were actively jeopardizing Liam's professional standing and his emotional well-being, all to maintain a facade for a woman Jamal had known for less than a year. Tasha was going to get the show of a lifetime, and Liam was the unwitting stage manager. Liam continued talking, completely oblivious to the silent execution being prepared on my end of the line. I have the terminal fully charged and synced to the escrow account, he rambled happily. Beatrice mentioned that Tasha is coming along for the tour as well. Jamal said it is going to be a surprise for her. A new kingdom for his new queen, he called it. I assume you are tied up at the office since he is taking point on the logistics today. The puzzle pieces clicked together in perfect, agonizing harmony. Jamal had not told Liam about the divorce. He had not told his own brother-in-law that we were legally separated, that our assets were severed, and that Tasha was not just a friend, but his new fiancée. Jamal was playing a dangerous, reckless game. He was leveraging the legitimate credibility of our past marriage to gain VIP access to the development planning, to swipe the card, secure the property, and then figure out the fallout later. He probably assumed the $200,000 charge would simply go through like all his other lavish expenses, and he would deal with my anger after the fact. He thought the phantom grace period extended to multi-$100,000 real estate deposits. Liam, I said, keeping my tone warm and supportive, I am so glad Jamal reached out to you for this. Keeping business in the family is incredibly important to me. You have worked hard, and you deserve a listing of this magnitude. I appreciate that more than you know, Chloe, Liam replied, his voice softening with genuine gratitude. Maya is going to be thrilled. Beatrice has been talking non-stop about how Jamal is finally stepping into his true potential. I am just honored to facilitate the transaction. We are meeting at the property at 3 o'clock sharp. I have the champagne chilling on ice. 3 o'clock. I glanced at the digital clock on my desktop monitor. It was currently 1 in the afternoon. I had exactly 2 hours to prepare for the collision. That is wonderful, Liam, I said, leaning forward and resting my chin on my hands. I want to make sure everything goes flawlessly for Jamal and Beatrice today. I know how much this specific property means to the family's image. In fact, since it is such a monumental purchase, I think it is only right that I am thoroughly involved in the final approval process. Liam paused, a slight hesitation creeping into his voice. Oh, Jamal mentioned he wanted to handle the deposit himself today to surprise everyone. I do not want to step on his toes if he is trying to make a grand gesture. Do not worry about stepping on anyone's toes, I reassured him smoothly. A deposit of $200,000 requires precise authorization. I am not going to interfere with his grand gesture. I just want to ensure the administrative side of the transaction clears without a single hitch. You know how banks can be with high-volume security flags. I will be there to make sure the black card processes exactly the way it is supposed to. Liam let out a breath of relief. That makes total sense. You are the best, Chloe. Always thinking 2 steps ahead of the logistics. Jamal is a lucky man to have you managing the back end of his empire. I will see you at 3. Villa number 4, right off the main private drive. I will be there, Liam. Have the champagne ready. I ended the call with Liam and set my phone flat on the polished mahogany of my desk. The sheer magnificent irony of the situation settled over me like a tailored silk coat. Liam, Jamal, and Beatrice were currently driving toward Cypress Ridge, completely intoxicated by the illusion of their own purchasing power. What they did not know, what they could not possibly have comprehended during our 10 years of marriage, was the true scope of my portfolio. My firm, the same firm Jamal had dismissed as a little staging hobby just hours ago in the lawyer's office, was not just involved in luxury real estate. We were the silent primary financial backers of the entire Cypress Ridge development. I stood up from my desk and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Atlanta skyline. 2 years ago, when the Cypress Ridge land was just a sprawling, untouched parcel of forested hills north of the city, my chief financial officer Valerie and I had orchestrated a massive capital play to secure the zoning rights. We partnered with a premier builder, hiding my investment group behind a series of impenetrable blind trusts and holding companies. I funded the infrastructure, the imported materials, and the exclusive marketing contracts. Liam's brokerage firm was simply hired by my proxy board to handle the retail listings. Jamal was about to walk into a house that I literally built from the ground up, attempting to buy it with my own canceled credit card. I turned away from the window and grabbed my leather briefcase. I needed the perfect props for this performance. I pulled out a heavy aluminum clipboard and a thick roll of architectural blueprints for the remaining unbuilt lots. If I was going to crash their private viewing, I was going to do it with the absolute unquestionable authority of the master of the house. I buzzed my assistant on the intercom, informing her that I would be conducting a spontaneous senior partner site inspection at Cypress Ridge and to clear my schedule for the rest of the afternoon. The drive to the development took exactly 45 minutes. I merged onto the highway, keeping my sleek black SUV at a steady, unhurried pace. The weather was bright and clear, the Georgia sun reflecting off the hood of my car. I let the silence of the cabin center my thoughts. For a decade, I had shrunk myself to fit into Jamal's fragile comfort zone. When I acquired the Cypress Ridge property, I deliberately kept the paperwork out of our shared residence. I never celebrated the groundbreaking ceremony with him. I never showed him the rendering of the multi-million-dollar villas. I hid my greatest professional triumph because I knew it would make him feel small. Now that hidden triumph was going to serve as the perfect stage for his financial execution. I turned off the main highway and steered my vehicle down the winding private access road that led to the Cypress Ridge gates. The entrance was a masterclass in understated luxury, featuring massive stone pillars and wrought iron security gates, flanked by lush, manicured landscaping. I pulled up to the guardhouse. The security officer, a stern-looking man named Marcus, who had been briefed on all primary stakeholders, stepped out of his booth. He leaned down to check my license plate, then immediately stood up straight and offered a sharp, respectful nod. He pressed a button on his belt, and the heavy iron gate swung open smoothly. He did not ask for my identification. He did not ask for my destination. When you own the ground, they stand on doors simply open for you. I drove through the gates and navigated the winding, freshly paved neighborhood roads. The community was stunning. Massive contemporary estates nestled perfectly into the natural topography, featuring sharp geometric lines, expansive glass walls, and imported natural wood accents. It was a neighborhood designed exclusively for titans of industry, professional athletes, and generational heirs. It was a neighborhood where a mid-level marketing manager like Jamal had absolutely no business breathing the air, let alone signing a purchase agreement. I rounded a gentle curve and Villa Number 4 came into view. It was arguably the crown jewel of the first phase of construction. A breathtaking $5 million masterpiece sitting on a slight elevation, offering panoramic views of the surrounding valley. The exterior was a stunning blend of dark steel, pale limestone, and endless floor-to-ceiling windows. The driveway was paved with crushed white stone that crunched satisfyingly under the heavy tires of my vehicle. Parked right in front of the massive double mahogany front doors was Jamal's leased white sports car. Parked directly behind it was Liam's branded brokerage sedan. I pulled my SUV into the space adjacent to Liam's car, taking a moment to appreciate the visual contrast. Jamal's car was flashy, loud, and completely financed by my generosity. My vehicle was understated, paid for in cash, and registered to a corporation that generated more revenue in a month than Jamal would see in a lifetime. I turned off the engine and gathered my clipboard and blueprints. I stepped out of the vehicle, the warm afternoon breeze catching the edge of my tailored blazer. The air smelled of fresh pine and newly poured concrete. I walked slowly up the wide, floating concrete steps leading to the front entrance. I could hear the faint, muffled sounds of laughter and loud conversation echoing from inside the house. Beatrice's distinct theatrical laugh pierced through the heavy glass windows. They were already celebrating. They were already walking through the halls of my investment, claiming it as their own. I paused at the front door. The smart lock system blinked with a soft blue light. As the primary developer, my biometric data was hard-coded into the master security system for every property in the neighborhood. I did not need Liam to let me in. I did not need to knock. I pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. The deadbolt engaged with a heavy, satisfying click, and the heavy mahogany doors unsealed. I pushed the door open and stepped into the grand foyer. The interior of the villa was spectacular, flooded with natural light from the massive skylights above. The floors were imported Italian terrazzo, and the staging which my firm had meticulously curated just 3 weeks ago featured custom velvet sectionals and abstract metal sculptures. I stood in the entryway, adjusting my grip on my clipboard, letting my eyes adjust to the bright sunlit interior. From my vantage point, I had a clear line of sight into the sprawling open concept living and dining area. Liam was standing near the massive marble kitchen island, busy uncorking a bottle of premium champagne. He had set out 4 crystal flutes, his face flushed with the adrenaline of a looming career-defining commission. Standing near the sliding glass doors that opened to the infinity pool was Tasha. She was wearing an entirely inappropriate skin-tight neon dress and holding her phone out, clearly filming content for her social media followers. She was panning the camera across the valley view, posing and pouting, narrating her luxurious new reality to an audience of strangers. And then there were Jamal and Beatrice. They were standing in the center of the sunken living room, pointing up at the custom floating staircase. Jamal had his hands on his hips, his chest puffed out, radiating an aura of completely unearned authority. He was telling Beatrice how he planned to convert the upstairs loft into a private cigar lounge. Beatrice was nodding along enthusiastically, her designer handbag clutched tightly in her manicured hands, agreeing that a man of his stature absolutely required a designated space to entertain his high-net-worth colleagues. They looked so incredibly comfortable. They looked like they belonged there. They had fully bought into the illusion that a plastic card could instantly elevate them into the upper stratosphere of society. They did not notice me standing in the shadows of the foyer. They were too absorbed in the echo chamber of their own vanity. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the cool, climate-controlled air of the villa fill my lungs. The clipboard felt solid and grounding against my side. This was my house. This was my development. This was my money they were attempting to spend. I was not the bitter ex-wife showing up to cause a petty emotional scene. I was the senior partner arriving to conduct a routine site inspection on a multi-million-dollar asset. I was the master of the house stepping into the light to reclaim my territory. I let my heels hit the terrazzo floor with a sharp, echoing snap. The sound cut through their laughter and their social media narrations like a gunshot. The time for hiding behind blind trusts and polite silence was officially over. I stepped out of the foyer and into the main living area, ready to dismantle their entire world, one swipe at a time. The sharp sound of my heels against the imported Italian terrazzo echoed through the massive open-concept living space. It was a single, authoritative crack that instantly shattered the lively atmosphere. The laughter died in Jamal's throat. Beatrice froze, her manicured hand hovering halfway to her mouth with a crystal champagne flute. Tasha lowered her smartphone, her manufactured influencer smile dissolving into a harsh, confused scowl. Even Liam, who had just finished pouring the last glass of vintage champagne, stopped dead in his tracks. The entire room snapped their attention toward the foyer, staring at me as if an apparition had just manifested in the middle of their perfect afternoon. I stepped fully into the natural light pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I held my heavy aluminum clipboard in my left hand and the thick roll of architectural blueprints in my right. I did not look angry, I did not look sad, and I certainly did not look like a woman who had come to beg for her husband back. I looked exactly like what I was, a senior real estate developer surveying an asset. For 3 agonizingly long seconds, absolute silence reigned. You could hear the faint ambient hum of the smart climate control system and the gentle ripple of the infinity pool outside. Then the shock wore off, and the sheer, unadulterated entitlement took over. Beatrice was the first to break the silence. Her shock rapidly morphed into a mask of pure vitriolic rage. She slammed her champagne flute down onto the marble kitchen island with such force I genuinely thought the crystal might shatter. "What in the world are you doing here?" Beatrice demanded, her voice shrill and echoing off the high ceilings. "How did you even get past the security gate?" Before I could utter a single syllable, Beatrice turned her venom toward her son's brother-in-law. "Liam, call the community guards right this instant. This is absolutely unacceptable. She tracked us down. She is stalking my son." I knew she was unhinged, but this is a completely new low even for her. Liam stood frozen behind the kitchen island, clutching the neck of the champagne bottle. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming freight train. His eyes darted nervously from Beatrice to Jamal, and then finally to me. The poor broker was completely out of his depth. He had operated under the assumption that the Blackwell family was a unified, wealthy dynasty. He had absolutely no idea he was standing in the middle of a freshly detonated domestic war zone. "Wait," Liam stammered, raising his free hand in a desperate attempt to lower the temperature in the room. "Beatrice, please let us all just take a breath. Chloe is not stalking anyone. I actually spoke with her on the phone a couple of hours ago. She told me she needed to drop by the property today to handle some administrative paperwork for the transaction. I thought you all knew she was coming. I thought she was here to help finalize the deposit." Jamal let out a loud, aggressive scoff. He marched forward, closing the distance between us. His chest puffed out in that familiar, pathetic display of manufactured dominance. He pointed a finger directly at my face, completely ignoring Liam's explanation. "You are out of your mind," Chloe Jamal growled, his voice dropping an octave as he tried to sound intimidating. "You actually called my brother-in-law and manipulated him into letting you crash our private viewing. Do you have any idea how pathetic this looks? We signed the divorce papers literally days ago, and you are already following me around the city trying to ruin my life." I did not step back. I did not flinch. I simply looked down at the finger he had pointed at my face, then slowly raised my eyes to meet his. "I am not here for you, Jamal," I said, my voice smooth, steady, and devoid of any emotional weight. "I am here to conduct a site inspection. As I told Liam on the phone, a transaction of this magnitude requires proper oversight. I am just making sure the property meets all necessary standards before any funds change hands." Tasha, who had been lingering near the sliding glass doors, finally decided it was her moment to step into the spotlight. She strutted across the terrazzo floor, the heels of her designer sandals clicking aggressively. She inserted herself right next to Jamal, looping her arm possessively through his, and glaring at me from behind her oversized sunglasses. "Are you seriously trying to play the protective wife right now?" Tasha sneered, looking me up and down with exaggerated disgust. "Jamal does not need you checking on his purchases. He is a grown man making a massive investment for our future. You showing up here with a clipboard trying to act like a building inspector is the most embarrassing thing I have ever seen. Why do not you just go home? Go back to your little staging business and leave us alone. We are buying this villa today, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop it." I shifted my gaze to Tasha. She was holding a brand new leather handbag, the exact one she had been flaunting on her social media feed all weekend. It was a beautiful bag. It was also a bag that was currently suspended in a digital holding pattern, waiting for my corporate account to approve a capture request that would never arrive. "That is a lovely dress, Tasha," I said politely, completely ignoring her insults. "And you are absolutely right. Jamal is a grown man making an investment. I am merely here as a silent observer. Please do not let my presence interrupt your celebration." Beatrice marched forward to join Jamal and Tasha, forming a unified, hostile front in the middle of the living room. She crossed her arms over her chest, her eyes narrowed into angry slits. "We will not be observed by you," Beatrice hissed. "This is a private showing for a private purchase. We are the buyers, which means we dictate who is allowed on the premises. Liam, I am not asking you again. Tell this woman to leave, or we will take our $200,000 deposit and find another broker who actually respects our privacy and our family name." Liam swallowed hard beads of sweat visibly forming on his forehead. The threat of losing a massive commission was a heavy weight on a luxury broker's shoulders. He looked at me pleadingly, silently, begging me to de-escalate the situation so he could save his deal. "Chloe, maybe it would be best if we handled the administrative side of things back at my office later," Liam suggested, nervously setting the champagne bottle down on the marble counter. "Jamal and Beatrice are really excited about locking this place down today, and I want to make sure they get the full, uninterrupted luxury experience. We can review the paperwork together tomorrow." I shook my head slowly, offering Liam a reassuring smile. "I am afraid that will not be possible, Liam. My schedule is completely booked for the rest of the week. This site inspection has to happen right now. But as I said, I will stay entirely out of their way. I will be reviewing the architectural finishings in the West Wing while you handle the earnest money deposit." Tasha let out a sharp, mocking laugh. She disengaged her arm from Jamal's and began to slowly pace around the living room, running her hands over the expensive furniture. She clearly wanted to assert her dominance over the space to prove that she was the new queen of this castle. She stopped in front of a custom velvet sectional, running her manicured nails over the plush fabric. "You know what is really sad about you showing up here, Chloe?" Tasha said, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "You are standing in the middle of true luxury trying to pretend you belong, but you just look entirely out of place. Look around you. This is what a real home looks like." Jamal is finally with a woman who understands high-end aesthetics. Someone who knows how to curate a lifestyle, not just labor away at some little house decorating hobby. She gestured expansively toward the abstract metal sculptures and the imported Italian rugs. "The staging in this place is absolutely flawless." The designer clearly understood the assignment. "Jamal and I are buying it fully furnished because it perfectly matches my vision. It takes a certain level of sophistication to appreciate a build like this. Something a workaholic like you could never provide for him. You were too busy trying to be the man of the house to learn how to make it beautiful." I kept my face perfectly neutral, biting the inside of my cheek to suppress the profound, almost overwhelming urge to laugh out loud. The sheer magnificent irony of her monologue was staggering. Tasha was strutting through the villa, praising the flawless aesthetics, insulting my taste, and crediting her own sophisticated eye, completely and utterly unaware that she was admiring my handiwork. My firm had designed the interior layout. I had personally selected that exact velvet sectional. I had sourced the metal sculptures from an artist in Milan. My procurement team had flown in those Italian rugs. Every single square inch of the property she was claiming as her own kingdom was a direct product of the very labor she was currently mocking. She was insulting the artist while trying to buy the painting with stolen funds. "It truly is a stunning property, Tasha," I agreed softly, letting the irony simmer beneath the surface of my words. "The design team must be incredibly talented. I am so glad the aesthetic matches your sophisticated vision." Tasha flipped her hair over her shoulder, looking immensely pleased with herself. She believed she had just won a major intellectual victory. Jamal, emboldened by Tasha's performance, stepped forward again. He closed the remaining distance between us, leaning down slightly to invade my personal space. He wanted to physically intimidate me, to use his height and his deep voice to force me into submission. "You heard her, Chloe?" Jamal growled, his voice a low, hostile rumble. "This is our space now. You are embarrassing yourself. You thought you could come in here with your little clipboard and ruin our day, but you are just making yourself look desperate. I am about to drop $200,000 to secure my family's future, a future you are permanently excluded from. Turn around, walk out those front doors, and go back to your empty apartment before I have Liam call the authorities and drag you out." I did not step back. I did not break eye contact. I let his threats wash over me like a light, inconsequential drizzle. I could smell the expensive cologne radiating off his skin, the cologne I had paid for. I could see the subtle nervous twitch in his jaw, the telltale sign he always displayed when he was overcompensating for his own insecurity. He thought he was a titan of industry banishing a peasant, but I knew he was just a dependent wearing a costume. I calmly broke eye contact with Jamal and stepped to the side, smoothly bypassing his attempt to block my path. I walked directly over to the massive imported marble kitchen island. I placed my heavy aluminum clipboard down onto the pristine surface with a solid, resonant thud. I placed the thick roll of architectural blueprints right next to it. I turned around and leaned back against the cool marble edge, crossing my arms comfortably over my chest. I looked at Jamal, whose face was rapidly twisting into a mask of furious, impotent confusion. I looked at Tasha, who was glaring at me from across the room. I looked at Beatrice, practically seething with indignation. And finally, I looked at Liam, who was standing awkwardly near the point-of-sale terminal, waiting for direction. I raised my left wrist and deliberately checked the time on my diamond watch. I let a few seconds of heavy, agonizing silence stretch across the room before I finally spoke. "I'm just here for the transaction, Liam," I said, my voice projecting crisp and clear through the cavernous space. "Proceed." The silence in the room stretched out thick and suffocating. My simple two-word command hung in the air, a direct challenge that completely neutralized their hostility. Jamal stood paralyzed. He had anticipated a screaming match. He had braced himself for tears, bitter accusations, and a dramatic display of female jealousy. My absolute unshakable calm completely short-circuited his limited processing power. He looked at Liam, then at Tasha, silently searching for a script he did not possess. Beatrice, however, refused to let the momentum die. She was a woman who had spent her entire adult life manufacturing a reality where she was the undisputed matriarch of a wealthy, untouchable dynasty. She could not allow my silent authority to overshadow her son's supposed triumph. If Jamal was faltering under the weight of my indifference, she was going to step in and forcefully steer the narrative back to their grand, impenetrable illusion. Beatrice adjusted her designer silk scarf and took two deliberate steps toward the center of the sprawling living room. She positioned herself right under the spectacular modern chandelier, ensuring the brilliant natural light caught the heavy gold jewelry draped around her neck and wrists. She wanted to command the room. She wanted to deliver a performance that would firmly cement their elite status and simultaneously put me in my rightful subordinate place. Liam, Beatrice began, her voice projecting with a loud theatrical resonance that commanded attention from everyone present. I want to make something perfectly clear regarding how the Blackwell family conducts business. We are not like your typical everyday buyers. We do not sit around waiting for bank approvals, and we certainly do not jump through the standard financial hoops designed for the working class. When a Blackwell sees something they desire, they secure it immediately. Liam nodded eagerly, his eyes wide with the anticipation of a massive, life-changing commission. He was practically bouncing on his heels, desperate to appease the woman he believed was the matriarch of a sprawling financial empire. Absolutely, Beatrice, Liam said, his voice dripping with professional reverence. In this highly competitive luxury market, cash is absolutely king. Buyers who can bypass the traditional mortgage underwriting process always jump to the absolute front of the line. Exactly, Beatrice declared, clapping her manicured hands together with a sharp smack. We are bypassing the standard financing protocols entirely. Jamal is stepping into a new era of executive leadership, and his residence must reflect that profound elevation without delay. We are not going to risk losing this spectacular villa to some out-of-state buyer or some random tech startup millionaire. We are securing the property today, right here, right now. We are going to put down a heavy, undeniable deposit to remove this listing from the market immediately. Tasha beamed, wrapping her arm tightly around Jamal's waist and resting her head against his shoulder. She looked around the $5 million estate with hungry, greedy eyes, already mentally measuring the expansive windows for custom silk drapery. She was entirely captivated by the performance. She genuinely believed she had struck gold, marrying into a family with such limitless liquid wealth that they could drop a small fortune on a random Tuesday afternoon just to make a point. Beatrice was not finished. Her grand speech was not just about securing the magnificent house. It was a calculated, deliberate weapon aimed directly at my chest. She turned her body, slowly shifting her focus from Liam until she was staring straight into my eyes. The smug, condescending sneer on her face was almost radiant. She wanted to ensure I felt the full crushing weight of my supposed irrelevance in the face of their triumph. You see, Chloe, Beatrice said, her tone dripping with mock pity and theatrical sorrow. This is the exact echelon the Blackwell family has always belonged in. We come from a lineage of excellence and expectation. For the last 10 years, my son tried his absolute hardest to accommodate your limited vision. He tried to shrink himself down to fit into your small, stressful world of endless work and constant anxiety. But a lion cannot live in a cage forever. He eventually has to break free and claim his rightful territory. She gestured expansively around the massive sunlit living area, showcasing the soaring ceilings and the imported architectural details. This estate is his rightful territory. It takes a certain kind of pedigree to truly inhabit a space like this. It requires an innate understanding of luxury, of legacy, of generational power. You were a temporary passenger on his journey, Chloe. We appreciate the mundane administrative assistance you provided during his formative years. but you simply do not possess the capacity to stand beside him at the summit. He needs a woman like Tasha, a woman who understands how to support a king, not a woman who constantly competes with him. I maintained my relaxed position against the marble kitchen island. I did not cross my arms defensively. I did not break eye contact. I kept my face utterly serene, allowing her to dig the hole deeper and wider with every single syllable. I wanted her to put everything on the record. I wanted her pride to reach the absolute highest possible altitude so the impending drop would be completely catastrophic. I let her breathe in the delusion. Jamal seemed to draw profound strength from his mother's delusion. His chest puffed back out, the nervous tension leaving his shoulders. He genuinely believed that Beatrice's words were altering the physical reality of the room. He believed that if she said they were royalty loudly enough, it would magically transform his empty bank accounts into overflowing vaults of cash. He looked at me with a triumphant, arrogant smirk, convinced that I was standing there silently because I was completely broken by their sheer magnificence. Liam, eager to capitalize on the soaring momentum and lock in the sale before the awkward family dynamics could derail the afternoon, clapped his hands together. Well, I think that is a beautiful testament to Jamal's hard work and the family's incredible legacy. Let us make this official right now. Let us get this spectacular property off the market and firmly secure your brand new future. Liam walked over to his premium leather briefcase, resting on the far end of the massive marble island. He unzipped the main compartment and pulled out a sleek, modern mobile point-of-sale terminal. It was a sophisticated piece of technology designed specifically for high-yield real estate deposits and rapid luxury asset transfers. He set the device down gently on the counter, placing it right next to my aluminum clipboard and my thick roll of architectural blueprints. He picked up his tablet and quickly navigated through the brokerage's encrypted escrow application. I watched his fingers fly across the digital screen as he populated the critical transaction details. He typed in the exact property address: Villa Number 4, Cypress Ridge Development. He entered the primary buyer's name, Jamal Blackwell, and then with an enthusiastic flourish, he typed in the specific deposit amount, $200,000.00. This is going to be a clean direct capture for the earnest money. Liam explained, his voice bubbling with professional excitement as he synced the tablet to the mobile terminal via a secure Bluetooth connection. The funds will be routed directly into our heavily fortified holding escrow account. Once the authorization clears, I will immediately print the digital receipt, we will sign the binding preliminary purchase agreement, and this $5 million masterpiece will be officially yours to command. The mobile processing terminal beeped a high, pleasant metallic chime. The small digital screen on the device illuminated brightly, displaying the staggering sum of $200,000 in bold, crisp, glowing black numbers. The green indicator light positioned at the top of the terminal began to flash rhythmically, signaling to the room that the hardware was fully connected online and ready to receive the payment data. The air in the room grew incredibly dense. The anticipation was thick enough to slice with a heavy blade. Tasha let out a small, breathless squeal of pure excitement, burying her face into Jamal's shoulder and squeezing him tight. Beatrice stood impossibly tall, radiating absolute victory, her eyes locked intensely onto the flashing green light of the payment terminal. Jamal took a deep, steadying breath, stepping forward toward the edge of the marble island. He reached his right hand slowly into the inner pocket of his tailored suit jacket, his fingers wrapping firmly around his custom leather wallet. The ultimate financial flex was just seconds away. The grand declaration had been made, the stage was perfectly set, and the terminal was waiting. I watched him pull the wallet from his pocket, my heart beating in a slow, rhythmic drum of pure, unadulterated anticipation. The climax of his delusion had finally arrived. Jamal reaches into the inner breast pocket of his tailored suit jacket, moving with the deliberate, exaggerated slowness of a man who believes he owns the entire world. He pulls out a custom monogrammed leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a neat row of premium credit cards. He does not just extract the primary titanium authorized user card. He performs a theatrical extraction, sliding the heavy metal from its slot with 2 fingers, making absolutely sure the sleek black finish catches the brilliant natural light pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He holds the card aloft for a brief moment. He looks directly at me, his eyes burning with a toxic mixture of arrogance and spite. This is his ultimate weapon. This small piece of titanium represents his entire identity, his perceived dominance, and his absolute victory over the woman he believes he has successfully discarded. He turns his body away from me with a smug, self-satisfied smirk and places the heavy metal card onto the pristine marble kitchen island. The sharp, solid clink of the titanium hitting the imported stone echoes loudly through the cavernous living room. It sounds like a gavel coming down a final judgment in his favor. Liam approaches the marble island with the reverence a priest might reserve for a sacred relic. His hands are slightly clammy with the nervous, electric anticipation of securing a life-changing commission. He picks up the heavy black card, respectfully admiring its weight and flawless finish. He taps the screen of his digital tablet, verifying the exact transaction parameters: $200,000.00. An earnest money deposit to secure the most spectacular $5 million villa in the entire Cypress Ridge development. Liam slides the titanium chip into the top slot of his mobile point-of-sale terminal. The machine registers the insertion instantly. A small, vibrant blue loading circle appears on the bright digital display. Connecting to network. Processing transaction. Please wait. The seconds begin to stretch out, bending time in the silent, sunlit room. Tasha is practically vibrating with joy, her hands clasped tightly together beneath her chin. A wide, victorious smile is plastered across her perfectly contoured face. Beatrice stands impossibly tall, radiating a fierce, matriarchal pride, her chin tilted upward in an arrogant display of generational superiority. Jamal adjusts his expensive silk tie, adopting the relaxed, unbothered posture of a true financial titan, casually dropping $250,000 on a Tuesday afternoon. I remain perfectly still against the edge of the kitchen counter. My face is a calm, unreadable mask. I am the only living soul in this $5 million estate who knows exactly what the banking server is currently doing. I know the digital signal is traveling from the mobile terminal, bouncing through the encrypted payment network, and requesting a massive authorization from a primary corporate account that has been ruthlessly and permanently severed from Jamal's name. The terminal shatters the heavy silence of the room. It does not emit the pleasant, soft, melodic chime of an approved purchase. Instead, it unleashes a harsh, aggressive, rapid-fire electronic beep. It is a sharp, alarming squawk designed specifically to alert a merchant to a critical financial failure. The bright green indicator light positioned at the top of the device instantly switches to a hard, unforgiving, pulsing red. The blue loading circle vanishes, replaced by a solid, bright error message. Liam looks down at the display. The eager, commission-hungry smile freezes on his face, rapidly melting into a mask of pure confusion. Liam blinks rapidly, leaning closer to the glowing screen as if his own eyes are actively deceiving him. The room goes entirely suffocatingly quiet. Tasha lowers her hands, the joyous smile faltering as she senses the sudden shift in the atmospheric pressure. Beatrice frowns, her perfect posture stiffening defensively. Jamal drops his hands from his hips, his arrogant swagger evaporating into a sudden tense rigidity. Liam clears his throat, the sound incredibly loud and awkward in the silent house. He taps the screen with a trembling finger, attempting to refresh the prompt, desperately hoping for a simple network timeout. The red light pulses again. The angry beep repeats. Liam looks up, his face flushed with extreme, agonizing discomfort. He glances at me nervously for a fraction of a second, then turns his full attention back to his brother-in-law. "There seems to be a slight processing error," Liam stammers, trying frantically to maintain his upbeat, professional broker persona. "The terminal is saying the transaction is declined. In fact, there is a hard stop code right here on the prompt. It says the account is closed." Declined, account closed. The words hang in the air like a physical manifestation of poison. Jamal lets out a loud, forced bark of laughter. It is a completely unnatural, hollow sound that grates against the silence. He shakes his head, waving his hand dismissively through the air, as if swatting away a trivial, annoying insect. The confident swagger is visibly draining from his body, replaced by a frantic, scrambling energy, but his massive ego absolutely refuses to let the performance die. He immediately leans into the most predictable face-saving excuse available. It is just a bank security protocol, Jamal says, his voice pitching half an octave higher than its normal authoritative rumble. You know exactly how these high net worth accounts operate, Liam. The fraud department automatically flags any massive out-of-character charges to protect my assets. $200,000 is a heavy swipe to process without prior verbal authorization. They just locked the card temporarily for my own protection. It is a completely standard anti-theft glitch. Tasha breathes a loud, theatrical sigh of relief instantly and enthusiastically buying into the fabricated narrative. She reaches over and rubs Jamal's arm affectionately, gazing up at him with wide, adoring eyes, audibly praising his elite financial institution for keeping their immense wealth so incredibly safe and secure. Beatrice immediately chimes in her voice, shrill and commanding, desperate to crush any lingering doubt in Liam's mind. Of course it is a security measure. Liam. Beatrice snaps indignantly, glaring at the broker as if the decline is a personal insult he has leveled against her family. My son utilizes premium wealth management services. They do not just let anyone drain $250,000 from his portfolio without triggering a massive internal alert. It is exactly why we only bank with the absolute best institutions. Just run another card and bypass the fraud lock. Jamal reaches back into his custom leather wallet. His fingers are slightly trembling now, betraying the sheer, unadulterated panic bubbling just beneath his confident facade. He pulls out a secondary card. It is another premium rewards card, a platinum travel edition that I had historically allowed him to use strictly for expensive flight bookings and lavish client dinners. He slaps the platinum card down onto the marble counter, sliding it aggressively toward Liam's terminal. Just run this one, Jamal commands, trying desperately to regain his deep authoritative tone. It is tied to the exact same master portfolio, but it bypasses the daily limit restrictions and automated fraud triggers. Go ahead and push it through right now so we can finalize the paperwork and pop this champagne. I absolutely do not have the time to sit on hold with a bank concierge today over a simple security misunderstanding. Liam picks up the second card. He is sweating profusely now, large beads of moisture gathering at his temples. The terrifying prospect of losing a $5 million sale and a massive commission is clearly overwhelming him. He pulls the first titanium card out of the machine and slides the new platinum card into the chip reader. He taps the prompt on his tablet to initiate the secondary transaction, praying silently for a green approval screen. The blue loading circle appears again. Connecting. Processing. The agonizing wait returns to the villa. Jamal crosses his arms tightly over his chest. He absolutely refuses to look in my direction. He is staring a hole straight into the mobile terminal. His jaw clenched so tightly, a muscle twitches rhythmically near his ear. Tasha shifts her weight, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the side of her designer handbag. She is still trying to project an air of wealthy nonchalance, but the cracks are forming rapidly. Beatrice crosses her arms, tapping her foot on the terrazzo floor, radiating a furious, entitled energy that demands immediate compliance from the digital universe. The machine processes the new data. It searches the banking network for the active funding source. It races through the digital ecosystem, hunting for an open account, and crashes headfirst into the exact same impenetrable brick wall I constructed 5 days ago. The terminal erupts again. The aggressive, sharp, rapid-fire beep echoes violently off the imported terrazzo floors. The indicator light flashes an unforgiving, blinding red. The screen resets to the hard error display. Liam stares at the screen. The color completely and entirely drains from his face, leaving him looking pale and physically ill. He slowly pulls the platinum card out of the machine and places it gently on the marble counter, as if the plastic itself might burn him. He looks at Jamal. His professional demeanor entirely shattered, his voice dropping to a terrified, strained whisper. "Declined again, Jamal. The code is identical. It says the account has been permanently closed. The reality of his absolute financial ruin finally crashes down onto his shoulders in front of everyone. Liam's words strike the marble island like a physical blow. The phrase permanently closed echoes off the soaring ceilings, bouncing against the imported glass walls, and sinking deep into the imported terrazzo floors. Jamal stares at the tiny digital screen as if it has suddenly started speaking a foreign language. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The defensive aggressive bluster that fueled his entire existence has been completely drained, leaving behind a hollow shell of a man who suddenly realizes he has brought a water gun to a nuclear war. He looks at his own hands, staring at the empty leather wallet, his mind frantically scrambling to find a loophole that does not exist. Beatrice, however, is simply not programmed to accept defeat. Her brain is incapable of processing the reality that the infinite well of Blackwell wealth has suddenly run dry. To her, this is not a catastrophic financial crisis. It is merely a clerical error committed by peasants who do not understand how to properly service elite clientele. She lets out a sharp, dramatic scoff, tossing her hands into the air in a display of ultimate exasperation. She rolls her eyes so hard I am surprised it does not trigger a migraine. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Beatrice snaps, stepping forward and physically bumping Jamal out of the way. She positions herself directly in front of Liam, effectively shielding her son from any further embarrassment. It is these incompetent banking algorithms. They hire these entry-level customer service agents to program the security firewalls, and they end up restricting the only clients who actually keep their institutions afloat. Jamal, put your wallet away. You should not have to deal with such amateur hour inconvenience on a day like today. She turns to Tasha, plastering on a warm, reassuring, intensely artificial smile. Tasha is currently clutching her designer handbag against her chest, looking like a deer caught in the headlights. "Do not worry about a thing," sweetheart, Beatrice coos, reaching out to pat Tasha on the shoulder. This is exactly why a powerful family operates as a single unified entity. When one avenue is temporarily blocked by bureaucratic incompetence, the matriarch simply opens another door. We are not letting a computer glitch ruin your welcome to the family celebration. Beatrice turns her attention back to Liam. She opens her extravagant purse and reaches inside, her movements sharp, deliberate, and aggressively confident. She is relishing this moment. This is her ultimate fantasy brought to life. She gets to play the wealthy savior, the undisputed queen of the dynasty, sweeping in to rescue the transaction and prove her absolute dominance to her new daughter-in-law. She pulls out her own gleaming metal card. It is a secondary card directly linked to my corporate account, carrying the exact same heavy weight and prestige as the ones Jamal just failed to process. "I will handle this," Liam, Beatrice announces, proudly holding the card between her index and middle fingers like a prized jewel. She extends her arm across the marble island. "My accounts bypass the standard verification limits. Run mine. We are closing this deal right now, and then I am calling the bank president directly to demand an apology for ruining our afternoon." Liam hesitates. The poor luxury broker is practically drowning in his own nervous perspiration. His perfectly styled hair is beginning to lose its shape, and his expensive suit looks suddenly tight and restrictive. He looks at the card in Beatrice's hand, then glances nervously at the point-of-sale terminal. He is terrified of running another decline, terrified of insulting the woman he believes holds the keys to his financial future. But he has absolutely no other option. With a trembling hand, he takes the card from Beatrice. "Of course," Beatrice Liam says, his voice cracking slightly as he forces a customer service smile. "I am sure it is just a routing issue with Jamal's specific card bracket. Let us just push this through the primary terminal and get you all celebrating." I remain perfectly still against the edge of the kitchen counter. I do not blink. I do not smirk. I just watch the execution unfold with the cold, clinical detachment of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. Beatrice stands tall, radiating absolute certainty. Tasha lets out a long, shaky breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she buys into the matriarchal rescue mission. Jamal refuses to look up, his eyes glued to the floor, a dark, heavy shadow passing over his face. He knows something is terribly wrong, but his pride will not allow him to voice his terror. Liam slides Beatrice's card into the chip reader. The terminal wakes up for the third time. The bright digital display illuminates the massive $200,000 earnest money deposit requirement. The blue loading circle appears on the screen. Connecting to network. Processing transaction. Please wait. The silence returns to the villa, but this time, it is different. It is not the silence of anticipation. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of an impending car crash. You can feel the atmospheric pressure in the room dropping precipitously. The smart climate control system kicks on a soft hum that sounds deafening in the quiet space. The terminal connects to the banking server. It requests authorization for the funds. It searches the designated profile for the required capital. It hits the exact same reinforced digital firewall I established the moment I signed the divorce papers. The machine does not just beep. It lets out a loud, piercing, sustained electronic rejection tone. It is a harsh, jarring noise that cuts through the luxury atmosphere like a siren. The indicator light at the top of the device flashes a brilliant, blinding red. The screen refreshes instantly. Declined. Account closed. The words flash in stark, unforgiving black letters against a bright red background. There is no ambiguity. There is no soft error code asking the merchant to call the bank. It is a definitive, absolute termination of service. The atmosphere in the room violently and immediately shifts. The arrogant, entitled energy that Beatrice brought into the space evaporates instantly, replaced by a sheer, unadulterated panic. Beatrice stares at the red light flashing on the terminal. Her mouth falls open in a silent gasp. The confident matriarch persona shatters completely, leaving behind a terrified older woman who suddenly realizes she is standing on a trapdoor that has just swung open. "That is impossible," Beatrice whispers, her voice completely devoid of its usual booming authority. She reaches out and grabs the edge of the marble island to steady herself, her knuckles turning white. "Run it again. You did it wrong, Liam. You pushed the wrong button. Run it again." Liam does not run it again. He pulls the card out of the machine and stares at his iPad. His hands are shaking so violently he almost drops the tablet. The sweat is now pouring down his face. He taps the screen, navigating away from the point of sale application and opening the deeper brokerage verification portal. He is frantically trying to find a reason, a workaround, a manual override. He types in the Blackwell family profile identifier. Tasha takes a slow step backward. The confusion on her face is rapidly morphing into dawning horror. She looks at Jamal, who is now sweating profusely, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. She looks at Beatrice, who is hyperventilating slightly, clutching her chest. Tasha is not a financial expert, but she knows what back-to-back hard declines look like. The illusion of the limitless Blackwell wealth is dissolving right in front of her eyes. The dream of the $5 million villa, the champagne brunches, the designer handbags, it is all suddenly looking like a terrifying mirage. "Jamal, what is going on?" Tasha asks, her voice tight and high-pitched. "Why are the cards declining? I thought you said the money was secure." Jamal cannot even formulate a response. He opens his mouth, but only a desperate, raspy breath comes out. He looks at me for the first time since the first card declined. His eyes are wide, terrified, and pleading. He is silently begging me to fix this, to step in and authorize the transaction, to save him from the absolute humiliation unfolding in front of his new bride. He expects me to play the role I have always played, the silent, accommodating savior who cleans up his messes to protect his image. I offer him absolutely nothing. I keep my posture relaxed, my expression entirely serene. I let him drown in the silence. Liam looks up from his iPad. His face is completely drained of color. He looks like a man who has just been told a meteor is heading straight for his house. He swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously in his throat. He places Beatrice's card gently on the counter next to Jamal's platinum card. "Beatrice." "I am so sorry," Liam says, his voice shaking uncontrollably. "I just checked the primary verification portal. It is not a glitch. The system is showing a total rejection across the entire profile. None of the accounts linked to your names have valid funding. The authorization network is returning a hard closure code for every single card registered to the Blackwell portfolio. The room spins into absolute chaos. Beatrice lets out a sharp, genuine cry of panic, clutching her designer handbag as if someone is trying to physically steal it from her. Tasha drops her phone onto the marble floor with a loud crack, staring at Jamal with a look of pure, unadulterated betrayal. Jamal takes a step back, his hands covering his face, his breathing coming in short, erratic gasps. The magnificent $5 million villa, the custom velvet sectionals, the imported Italian marble, it all suddenly feels like a prison. They are trapped in a house they cannot afford, exposed in front of a broker they have deceived, and completely at the mercy of the woman they thought they had discarded. The financial guillotine has dropped, and the execution is absolutely flawless. I push off the marble kitchen island, the subtle movement drawing every terrified eye in the room directly to me. The chaos of their panic hangs suspended in the air, waiting for a savior that will never arrive. I take 3 slow, measured steps toward the center of the living area. The sound of my heels on the terrazzo floor commands absolute attention. Liam is clutching his tablet like a life preserver, his knuckles white, his breathing shallow. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for an explanation, for a fix, for a sudden influx of capital to revive his dying commission. Jamal remains frozen, his hands covering his face, a man desperately trying to hide from a reality he can no longer outrun. Beatrice is gasping for air, her chest heaving under her designer silk scarf, staring at the declined credit cards resting on the counter as if they have suddenly burst into flames. Tasha is looking frantically between the 3 of them, the heavy realization dawning on her that she has been sold a magnificent, glittering lie. I do not raise my voice. I do not need to shout to establish dominance. True power operates in the quiet frequencies. I look at Liam first, releasing him from his professional agony. You can stop refreshing the verification portal, Liam, I say, my voice projecting crisp and clear through the cavernous space. There is no network error. There is no bank security glitch. The point of sale terminal is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The system is rejecting those cards because the accounts attached to them do not exist anymore. I terminated them permanently exactly 7 days ago. The moment the ink dried on our divorce decree, I revoked every single piece of authorized user access associated with the Blackwell name. Liam stares at me, his jaw dropping slightly as the pieces snap into place. He looks at the heavy titanium cards on his counter, then looks at Jamal, a profound sense of betrayal washing over his features. You mean, Liam stammers, his voice barely a whisper, you mean there are no funds? None at all. I nod slowly, confirming his worst fear. The Blackwell family money is a myth, Liam. It is a fairy tale they have been telling themselves and everyone else for the past decade. Every dime they have spent, every luxury trip they have taken, every extravagant dinner they have hosted was funded entirely by my corporate accounts. I was the bank, and the bank is now permanently closed. I turn my attention to Jamal. He slowly lowers his hands from his face. His eyes are bloodshot, his skin carrying a grayish, sickly pallor. The arrogant, chest-puffing titan of industry, who walked through those double mahogany doors 20 minutes ago, has completely vanished. In his place stands a terrified, financially illiterate man who is about to be forced to live within his actual means, Jamal. I say, letting his name hang in the air for a heavy, agonizing second. Did you really think you could secure a $5 million villa on a mid-level marketing manager salary? Let us be entirely transparent, since we are all gathered here today. Your annual compensation barely covers the monthly lease payments on that white sports car parked in the driveway. A car, I might add, that I paid the down payment for. You do not have an investment portfolio. You do not have secret offshore accounts. You have exactly what you earn, which is entirely insufficient to maintain even a fraction of this lifestyle. You used my titanium card to buy rounds of top-shelf liquor for your colleagues, playing the role of the undisputed rainmaker. You signed the receipts with a flourish while I was sitting in my office reviewing zoning permits at 10 o'clock at night. You believed that because you had access to the vault, you were the one who filled it. But you never filled it, Jamal. You just drained it. You spent 10 years using my hard work as your personal automatic teller machine to inflate your fragile ego. You convinced yourself that my success belonged to you simply because we shared a last name. But success is not transferred by marriage. It is earned through relentless grinding labor. Labor that you have never been willing to do. Jamal opens his mouth to speak to defend himself to salvage some shred of his dignity in front of his new bride, but he has absolutely no ammunition. He closes his mouth and looks down at the floor, totally defeated. I do not wait for him to recover. I shift my gaze to Beatrice. The self-proclaimed matriarch of the dynasty is leaning heavily against a velvet armchair, looking like she might actually pass out. The fierce, condescending pride that animated her entire existence has been completely hollowed out. Beatrice. I say my tone devoid of any sympathy. You spent the last decade treating me like a gold digger. You told everyone at your country club that your brilliant son graciously funded my little house decorating hobby. You sneered at me across Thanksgiving dinner tables and demanded I show respect to the Blackwell legacy. But the truth is, Beatrice, your entire affluent lifestyle was a direct product of my labor. The sprawling condo you live in, I bought it. The weekly spa treatments and private dining club memberships you used to impress your socialite friends. My company paid the invoices. That Italian espresso machine you claimed you bought for your son. My corporate account processed the transaction. You wore my firm's profits around your neck and on your wrists. I allowed it because I thought that was the price of peace in my marriage. I tolerated your relentless disrespect because I thought shielding your son's pride was my duty as a wife. I was wrong. My silence did not buy peace. It only bought your entitlement. You have been looking down on me from a pedestal that I built, paid for, and maintained. And now that pedestal is gone. You are going to have to go back to the country club and explain to your friends why your card is declining. You are going to have to explain why the Blackwell dynasty cannot afford the association fees on your condo next month. The subscription to your luxury life has been canceled. Beatrice lets out a quiet, choked sob, bringing a trembling hand up to cover her mouth. The sheer humiliation is visibly crushing her. She cannot look at me. She cannot look at Liam. She just stares at the floor, completely shattered. Finally, I turn my attention to Tasha. She is standing near the sliding glass doors, shivering slightly, despite the warm climate control. The smug, triumphant influencer who strutted through this house criticizing my staging work is entirely gone. She looks at Jamal with a mixture of absolute disgust and dawning horror. I take a slow step toward her, holding her gaze with unwavering intensity. Tasha. I say, my voice softening slightly, not out of kindness, but out of absolute surgical precision. I want you to listen to me very carefully. That designer lambskin handbag you are holding right now, it is a pending charge. The luxury travel concierge who booked your overwater bungalow in the Maldives. That is a pending charge. The vintage champagne you were sipping 10 minutes ago. You cannot afford it. Every single luxury item you have flaunted on social media over the past week was purchased on borrowed time. The vendors are going to settle those batches by the end of the business day, and every single one of those transactions will bounce. You walked into this property and insulted the aesthetic, claiming Jamal was finally with a woman who understood true luxury. The absolute tragic irony, Tasha, is that my firm designed this exact villa. I chose that velvet sectional you ran your nails over. I sourced the marble you are standing on. You are not a queen moving into a castle. You are a trespasser standing inside my latest investment project. The soft girl era you have been bragging about to your followers is about to become a very hard, very fast lesson in basic economics. Jamal cannot pay for the lifestyle you demand, and you are about to spend your honeymoon phase fighting off aggressive collection agencies. You thought you were stealing a king from a bitter aging ex-wife, but you did not upgrade Tasha. You just inherited my dependent. You inherited a man with a mountain of unearned arrogance and absolutely zero financial liquidity. I let the silence return, allowing the absolute brutality of the truth to sink deep into their bones. Tasha drops the designer handbag. The heavy leather hits the terrazzo floor with a soft, dull thud. She does not even reach down to pick it up. She just stares at Jamal, her chest rising and falling with rapid, furious breaths. The fairy tale is dead. The illusion is completely destroyed. I look around the spectacular $5 million living room. I look at the imported Italian marble, the custom metal sculptures, the soaring skylights. It is a magnificent property, a true testament to my firm's vision and capital capability. But it is not a home for the Blackwell family. It never was, and it never will be. The devastating reality of my words settled over the room like concrete. Liam was the first to physically react to the fallout. The luxury broker who had been expecting a payday was now moving with the frantic, jerky motions of a man trying to escape a burning building. He grabbed the mobile point-of-sale terminal from the Marble Island, his hands shaking so violently that he nearly dropped the expensive piece of equipment. He shoved it into his premium leather briefcase, practically throwing his tablet in right after it. The realization that his in-laws were not a dynasty of generational wealth, but a house of cards built entirely on my stolen credit was completely breaking his brain. He zipped the briefcase shut with a loud rip. He looked at Jamal with a mixture of absolute disgust and profound pity. The commission was dead. The multi-million-dollar deal was dead. And worse, he now had to go home and explain to his wife Maya that her family was completely broke and had just humiliated him professionally in front of the senior partner of the most powerful real estate firm in Atlanta. Liam did not say a word of farewell to the Blackwells. He did not offer comforting platitudes. He just wanted to get as far away from the blast radius as humanly possible. As Liam backed away toward the foyer, Beatrice finally snapped out of her paralyzed shock. She lunged forward, grabbing Jamal by the lapels of his tailored suit. Her carefully maintained matriarchal composure dissolved into sheer, unhinged panic. "Tell me she is lying." Jamal, Beatrice screamed, her voice cracking under the intense strain. "Tell me this is just a vindictive stunt. You told me you had your own investments. You told me the company was promoting you to regional director. Tell me you have the funds to clear this transaction right now." Jamal could not speak. He was actively hyperventilating. His chest heaved up and down in rapid, shallow bursts. The sweat poured down his forehead, soaking into the collar of his expensive dress shirt. He looked like a cornered animal, entirely stripped of his unearned arrogance and his fake executive swagger. He tried to pull away from his mother, but Beatrice dug her manicured nails into his jacket, shaking him violently. "Do not just stand there!" Beatrice shrieked, her voice echoing harshly off the soaring ceilings. "Fix this. Call the bank. Call your broker. Fix it right now." But there was absolutely nothing to fix. Jamal just shook his head, his eyes wide and terrified, a silent admission of total, inescapable defeat. Tasha watched the exchange between mother and son with absolute, undeniable revulsion. The final veil of the illusion fell away, exposing the terrifying truth of her new marriage. She had not married a king. She had not married a high-net-worth provider. She had married a financial dependent carrying a mountain of consumer debt and a mother who demanded to be treated like royalty on a peasant budget. The soft girl era she had bragged about online was instantly replaced by the terrifying prospect of aggressive collection agencies and repossession agents. Tasha turned on Jamal with the swift, brutal ferocity of a predator. "You lied to me!" Tasha screamed, her voice shrill and piercing. "You promised me a lifestyle. You promised me the Maldives. You let me go on social media and brag to my entire following about how a real man provides, and all you did was give me a front-row seat to your own eviction." Jamal finally found his voice, stepping back and holding his hands up defensively. "Tasha, baby, please just calm down." Jamal pleaded, his voice trembling and weak. "I can fix this. I just need a little time to move some things around." Tasha let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Move what around, Jamal? The credit cards you do not own, the money you do not make. I left a perfectly good life for this. You are a fraud, a pathetic, broke fraud." Tasha did not hold back. She unleashed a torrential downpour of humiliation, screaming at him about his fake watch, his leased car, and his total lack of actual masculinity. The argument exploded into the grand foyer, their shouts bouncing off the imported glass walls. Beatrice tried to intervene, yelling at Tasha to show respect to her husband, which only made Tasha turn her venom toward her new mother-in-law. They were tearing each other apart inside the empty shell of a $5 million house they could never dream of owning. I turned away from the screaming match, completely unbothered by the domestic war raging in my investment property. I picked up my heavy aluminum clipboard from the marble kitchen island. Liam was standing near the front door, looking completely shell-shocked, waiting for an opportunity to slip out without getting caught in the crossfire of Tasha and Beatrice. I walked over to the broker, my heels clicking smoothly against the terrazzo floor. I handed him the clipboard along with a customized site inspection form. I have reviewed the architectural finishings in the main living areas. Liam, I said, my voice projecting a calm, professional authority that contrasted sharply with the screaming match happening 10 feet away. The property is in immaculate condition. The staging is absolutely flawless. I am formally signing off on the final phase of this specific unit. Liam took the clipboard with shaky hands. He looked at my signature, then looked up at me, a profound sense of awe and terror mixed in his eyes. I advise you to implement a much stricter vetting process for your prospective buyers in the future, Liam, I added smoothly. A simple proof of funds verification would have saved you a tremendous amount of time today. Liam nodded vigorously, clutching his briefcase to his chest. Yes, absolutely. I understand completely. Thank you, Chloe. I turned my back on the broker, the screaming bride, the hyperventilating ex-husband, and the weeping former mother-in-law. I walked through the double mahogany front doors and stepped out into the brilliant, blinding afternoon sunlight. The warm Georgia air enveloped me, feeling fresher and cleaner than it had in a decade. I walked down the white stone driveway to my sleek, understated SUV. I climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away from Cypress Ridge, leaving them locked inside the ruins of their own spectacular delusion, completely unburdened and entirely free. 3 months passed with the swift, beautiful momentum of absolute liberation. The financial fallout for the Blackwell family was just as severe and catastrophic as I had calculated. The luxury vendors processed their final settlement batches, and the hard declines cascaded through their lives like an avalanche. The private dining club revoked Beatrice's membership. The auto detailing service sent Jamal to collections. The travel concierge canceled the overwater bungalow in the Maldives and kept the non-refundable booking fees, prompting a highly embarrassing legal threat from Beatrice that ultimately went absolutely nowhere. Tasha, realizing she had anchored to a sinking ship, filed for a legal annulment less than 30 days after the disastrous villa viewing. She completely wiped her social media profiles clean of any trace of the Blackwell family, retreating from the public eye to avoid the brutal mockery of her followers. Jamal was forced to surrender the keys to his leased sports car after missing 3 consecutive payments. He moved back into Beatrice's condo, which they were currently struggling to keep out of foreclosure. They had spent 10 years living at the very top of a financial mountain I had built for them, and without my support, gravity simply took over. I stood on the expansive balcony of my penthouse overlooking the vibrant Atlanta skyline. The evening air was cool and refreshing. My real estate staging and development firm had just secured a massive contract for a new high-rise project in the financial district, expanding our portfolio by another $20 million. I poured myself a generous glass of a rich vintage Cabernet, holding the delicate crystal by the stem. The city lights glittered below me, reflecting off the dark surface of my wine. I did not feel a single ounce of guilt for severing the financial umbilical cord. I did not feel pity for the people who had spent a decade treating my generosity as their birthright. I took a slow sip of the Cabernet, letting the flavors settle. I looked out over the sprawling metropolis that I was actively helping to build. A genuine, unburdened smile spread across my face. The noise, the manipulation, and the endless, exhausting demands of the Blackwell family were finally silent. I was exactly where I belonged, completely in control of my own empire, entirely at peace and wonderfully perfectly free.